Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And unbelievably, this is the 7th of these recordings sounding The Shallows. I know we often say that, but it is extraordinary to think it's 7 weeks since we thought things were perhaps changing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we thought we were nearly at the shore, didn't we? And that we'd just paddle about in the shallows for a little while and then we'd all be safely home.
That's right, yeah.
Somebody we know quite well sent an email this week that I thought just about sums it up, so I'm going to read it to you. She's talking about boats, and she's saying, it feels as if we're beached with the front half of the boat wedged in the sand and the back half floating. So if you want to get out, you either have to walk to the front or risk getting wet getting out the back. Some people are still fully in the boat. Others have got one leg over the side, and some are marching up the beach and just going for it. And that somehow sums up the world situation at the moment, doesn't it?
Do you think some have got one leg over the boat and one in the water? No, won't go into that. Actually, some things are still really difficult. We had an email from Florida, from a friend there, who was saying that things are very, very difficult in Florida for reasons on many levels, and they're really still far out
They're
at
getting
sea.
tossed about, aren't they?
They are, and our friend said really all we can do at the moment is stay indoors, so that's quite ominous, really.
And that is a good reminder, isn't it, actually? I tend to forget now that we're moving about ourselves more, that there are still people stuck, still people isolated, still people very frightened. But we're also hearing some good new things, aren't we? We heard from somebody who I think is beginning to walk up the shore, if you like. And she was saying that she's just going to start training to be a health coach. And suddenly things begin to feel as though they might just about be all right.
Yeah, to have something beckoning to you does help in feeling you're getting your feet on the ground. And one of the best things we had was from a couple we've known for some time now, a really charming couple who have finally had their application for adopting absolutely ratified, so that they can now go ahead. And I cannot tell you, when I read that, my eyes filled, because I know what that means to them. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, so there are good things on the horizon for some people, thank goodness. You know, sometimes you hear about something, don't you, and it kind of sums up everything that's going on. And very often it is a child's point of view. And this is a little girl who's the daughter of a young couple that we know. And she's just 3. And she was playing shops with our daughter's husband. Very seriously, like small children do, and she was very stern. She said, only 2 people allowed in my shop, and you've got to wear a mask before you can come in. And I thought that sums the whole thing up, doesn't it? You know,
because later she'll say, why has everybody stopped wearing masks?
Because the norm is to wear a mask.
That's the norm. It reminds me of when one of our sons was only 7. He said, can a man be Prime Minister?
That's right.
And I mentioned that somewhere else, and I heard that repeated all over the place.
Because Margaret Thatcher had been
Margaret Thatcher was in
Prime
charge.
Minister. I was going to say on the throne. She'd been Prime Minister for some time, and it didn't look like anything was going to change.
First instinct was the correct one, probably. Yes, that's right. Yeah. 3 years old. That's absolutely amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
I often talk about things that happen with our daughter Kate, who is also having a very happy time at the moment.
Well, she was only about 3 when you started to write, so she
was,
provided you with a fund of stories.
Yes, and she doesn't mind me telling them, which is extraordinary. But one story I do remember, and this is about, I suppose, about feeling safe, about your home, the people you're with being safe. But one very beautiful spring morning, I went out and found Kate standing on the lawn, holding a bluebell as high as she could in the sky, towards the sky, and she was shouting, "Daffodil, daffodil!" And there is a rather pedantic side to me occasionally, and I thought, well, I'd better just correct her, because I am her father. So I said, actually, Kate, that's not a daffodil, that's a bluebell. And she didn't lower her voice 1 decibel or her arm 1 millimeter. And she shouted, "Blue bell, blue bell," because it was just a wonderful spring morning. And it reminded me then of people in the church, you know, who say something like, "You have to speak in tongues to be a Christian." And God says, "No, you don't." Well, hopefully they then say, "You don't have to speak in tongues to be a Christian."
Yeah.
But we do hang on to things. But if you're safe,
If
you
you're
can
safe.
take change and correction,
Yeah,
can't you?
yeah. I think your image of your Nana's house is probably sums up safety for you, doesn't it, when you were little?
It does, yeah. It was, I suppose it was an island in a bit of a choppy sea, if we're going to continue with this metaphor that's becoming increasingly tedious. But yeah, I had an experience a while ago about that, and it was 2 dreams, and the dreams that sit in my mind like 2 guardians, I think, and in both of them I dreamt I was back in Nana's house, and for me as a small boy to walk up the path to her front door, to get off the bus from Tunbridge Wells, probably with my mother, walk up
probably
the
was.
front path,
You were very small.
somebody, yeah, was like going into fairyland. And in my dream, I didn't just dream about her house, I dreamt the feeling of being there. And there's something about knowing it's still inside me. You remember the fairy stories about people who are equipped with a bag with a stone in it and something else in it. I think there are things in my life, and I'm sure other people's, that will never go away. And I was just thankful, grateful, grateful for knowing they were still there, that knowledge of that feeling was still there.
And that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you're talking about this bag of things that you carry that are positive and good, but of course for some children it's the opposite, isn't it? They don't.
Well, we worked with kids for years, didn't we, with children whose
we did, but we've also met a
mess,
lot of adults for whom childhood was difficult in all sorts of ways, really, and patterns were formed that were very difficult to break. I mean, this is perhaps a bit of a odd example, but and this isn't based on reality.
This is a daughter and her father.
Did you manage to get my bike done, Dad?
Well, I'm changing the plug for your mother. I've just mended the chair your brother broke, and I've had your Auntie Phyllis on the phone for 20 minutes about next Wednesday. No, I have not got round to your bike yet, and it's no use going on about it because I just haven't had time.
Well, I didn't mean you should have done it, Dad. I was just asking.
Yeah, well, everyone's just asking. I've told you I'll do it, and I will do it as soon as I can. So you'll just have to be patient.
But I don't mind being patient, Dad. I wasn't complaining about you not doing it. I was just wondering if you got round to it. It was information I wanted.
Okay, all right, okay, I'll leave the plug. Let's not bother about what anybody else wants. Let's just get your bike fixed, then you'll be all right, and we can start seeing to other people's needs.
But I don't want you to be doing my bike now, Dad. I told you
if you don't want me to do your bike now, why have you been getting so het up about it?
I haven't been getting het up about it. I have not.
Well,
I wasn't anything when I came in.
What are you shouting at me for if you're not upset?
Well, I wasn't upset.
Well, you certainly are now, aren't you? Or is this what you call being calm and peaceful?
Dad, when I came in, I simply asked you quite quietly and nicely whether you'd done my bike or not. And that's all I wanted to know. Had you done my bike?
Well, have you moved all those books of yours off the landing like I asked you?
No, but that's not what we're talking about.
Oh, I see. We're allowed to talk about me not having done what you wanted, but we're not allowed to talk about you having let me down. Don't you think that's just a little bit less than fair?
I think that's stupid, Dad.
Oh, well, now we come to it, don't we? We usually end up with me being stupid, don't we? Do you know what my father would have said to me if I'd ever dared talk to him like that? Well, do you?
Yes, I do. You've told me about 39 times he'd have taken away all your privileges for the next 2 weeks, and you might have got the strap as well.
Well, there's no need to be sarcastic about your grandfather.
Oh, I was
At least he never set out to cause trouble in the family. He was a good man. He never did less than his best. He loved you kids when you were little. And I'd be ashamed to have him standing here listening to the way you're going. I don't know why you do it. I don't know what's happened to you. We used to play games and have a laugh together. You used to look up to me and ask questions, and I'd show you how to do things. We were best friends, damn it. What have I done to deserve you drifting off into being Miss Clever?
Dad, please, it's not fair. I didn't start any of this.
Oh, you didn't start it.
No.
Well, who did then? The man in the moon? You come in here demanding I do your blessed bite. You tell me I'm stupid when I talk about other people's needs. You mock your grandfather who's dead and can't defend himself, and then you tell me you didn't start it. Well, I'm sorry. I think I'm probably too stupid to understand, that much too stupid.
Look, Dad, I came in right and I said exactly like this. I said, have you managed to do my bite, Dad? And you got all exasperated and went on and on and on about all the other things you had to do. But I wasn't complaining. I was just asking.
Yeah. Like, I've just been asking you for weeks and weeks to clear your books and stuff off the landing and help your mother around the house and think about others a bit more than you do.
That's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're talking about. You stupid man. You don't want to understand. You don't want to listen to what I'm saying. I did not start it. I didn't start it. I didn't start it. I didn't start it. And I didn't start it. I didn't start it.
Sheila, come and lend a hand. Dorothy's having one of her do's again.
A pattern, you know, and yeah, we heard from somebody, didn't we, this week, who's been involved with foster children. And she was talking about taking children from all sorts of different homes into foster care.
That's right, we did, yeah.
And kind of having to show them, well, we were talking about showing children normality last time, weren't we?
That's right, we were, yeah. And it's a very, very difficult task. I mean, it means you're changing your whole perspective for kids who've grown up in one way and then come through in another way. And it's not that simple. I mean, I've got a picture upstairs, which is a bit of an odd thing. It's a photograph taken, I think, during the war, just after the war, of some steps.
Yes, that's right.
And our daughter Kate bought it for me. She looked online and found pictures of things near where I used to live, and purely by accident, she happened on this picture of steps in a place called Happy Valley. And Happy Valley was one of the few places where, as a family, we always, I think, felt happy.
Yeah.
Because happy things happened there, and those steps, I think we always counted them. I remember them as
There
being
were a lot of them.
hundreds and hundreds, but there are probably 100 steps. But that was interesting because my childhood was not easy, and that was a very happy memory.
And it is interesting, isn't it, that we were talking about foster carers and the fact that sometimes there's a bit too much of a leap from one life to another for a child to be able to cope with it. And if you remember, when we were in Peru, one of the best projects that we saw, it was a charity working with street children, wasn't it? And one of the very best homes that we saw recognised that a child who's lived only on the streets can't just suddenly adjust to being in a bed in a home.
It was one of the most creative things we've seen, wasn't it, in terms of projects?
It was.
They actually recreated the street.
They did.
Within the boundaries, the safe boundaries of the place where the children were living. So they had a well, and they had an actual street, and they had things that looked like the fronts of shops and things.
They did, and if you remember, they collected their food just from a sort of, I don't know, a window.
That's right,
and then they could take it, and if they wanted to, they could hide behind a wall.
Yeah.
They could feel the person that they had been. Yeah. I thought that was just a brilliant example of finding a new normal, of moving up the beach, if you like, of finding something new and something safe.
Yes, I must say, when I was thinking about what we might talk about today, and vaguely thinking about home and safety at home, one memory surfaced before any other, and that was from Wind in the Willows.
Oh, yes, of course.
And it was Mole. And if you pass me the little bit of paper over there, I'll read you. One of the bits that I remember so well from when I was a kid reading this, and it's when Rat and Mole have been away for some time, and Mole hasn't seen his house for a long time, and one day he smells it,
Yes.
and something profound happens in him. He wants to go back to his home. So he goes back, and he goes through the door, and he goes with Rat, and this is what we're told. Mole's face beamed at the sight of all these objects so dear to him, and he hurried Rat through the door, lit a lamp in the hall, and took one glance round his old home. He saw the dust lying thick on everything. He saw the cheerless, deserted look of the long-neglected house, and its narrow, meagre dimensions, its worn and shabby contents, and collapsed again on a half-chair, his nose to his paws. I remember that breaking my heart, and I almost remember putting off reading the next bit because I didn't know. Just tell people what happened
Well, yeah,
after
because
that.
that's so lovely. I mean, poor old Mole, having pictured his house and smelt it at its best, and suddenly there it was, all neglected and all sad, and he thought Ratty wouldn't think much of it, and of course he admires Ratty so much. But Ratty is a very special person, isn't he? And he immediately realises that this is terrible for Mole. And he says, well, my goodness, what a capital little home this is, Mole. And then he rushes around and he finds candles and he gets Mole dusting and he finds a sardine opener. And he says, wherever there's a sardine opener, there's bound to be a tin of sardines. They find a tin of sardines and some biscuits. And then he finds 2 bottles of beer and they light a fire. And suddenly Mole is at home. It isn't just to do with his familiar things. It's to do with being right in the centre of the very best of relationship, isn't it?
It's an alluring parable, and you can't go too far with parables, as I'm sure Jesus would agree. But the idea that your broken down concept of home and what it was can be renewed and lit up, and that new things can happen there. Like Jesus says, I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking and I want to come in.
Yeah.
And he might like to add, I'll give you a hand clearing up. And
he might. He certainly
making it
would
look
say,
a bit
don't get out
better.
the best china.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
make
right,
it posh. Let me sit on the wonky chair. Let me come right into the centre of your home where it's a bit messy and a bit dusty. Absolutely.
I was going to thinking we ought to say something about heaven as home, but we've said a lot about that. The only thing I would say is quote C.S. Lewis yet again, when he said, and I'm remembering the quote so as near as I can. Sometimes when you see a sunset or a beautiful view or anything that is really lovely, you feel homesick for a place where you have never been. And that is, in some strange way, probably quite a reliable direction finder. Yeah, I think so.
Well, it would be lovely to hear from you. If there's one sentence that sums up home for you, and it can be very negative, very wonderful, lots of things in between. It can be silly, it can be warm, it can be cosy. And we'll kind of put them together with no names added to it and find out what our joint memory of home is next time.
We'd enjoy that. Yeah. Okay, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.